Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our lunchtime session. So about three months ago, I was talking to my colleague Justine about how we can get more engagement with our members in spite of the fact that we are not able to meet face to face. And Justine now has just completed an executive master's on communications and marketing. Justine is our events manager. So she said that the latest trend was really moving beyond webinars and organizing short, quick meetings where people can sort of get a quick update about what's going on in a particular sector. And so that's really what this is all about. I thought that was a great idea. It seems to be working out well. Justine, by the way, is looking after all events at the EBAA. And the main point is really to get interaction from the people on the call. So this is not actually a webinar. This is a forum where you can put on your video, turn on your mic, discuss, ask questions. And what it's connected with is our associate member advisory council. We have 8 different groups, and today we are talking to our lawyers group and our financiers group. So we're going to start with the lawyers, and we have Amaël Chesneau from the lawyers committee. He's chair, along with Filippo Arcaleni, based in Malta, also chair of this committee. And I'm going to start with you, Amaël. I'd like you to give the audience an explanation for why this committee is important, and give some sort of insight as to the type of topics that you are working on.
All right, thank you, Paul, and good afternoon to all. First of all, I would just like to say thank you, Paul and Justine, for the organization of this online lunch. I find the format excellent, so please continue like this. It's excellent. On our side, Filippo and I have taken the offices of chair and vice chair of our group in March, and what we wanted to talk about, and the main focus we wanted to give in our group was about sustainability, social responsibility, and technology. These are the key matters we want to tackle during our mandate, because we think that these topics are key for the future of business aviation, and that these challenges require a wide cooperation between all the members, and also the involvement of the lawyers. Few weeks ago, our first action was to analyze whether, in particular, a specific legislation existed in each member state concerning the so-called SAF. So SAF was the first matter on which we focused together, because we wanted to know whether, behind these words, the member states were interested in adapting their legislation. And today you can find on the EBAA website few articles which are contribution from our members, presenting the legislation in France, the legislation in Germany, the legislation in Italy and in Turkey about SAF. And this was an interesting exercise, because we realized first that there was no harmonization at all between the member states.
Were you surprised by that?
I was, to tell you the truth, I was in fact surprised, but also I was surprised by the fact that in many member states there was not even any kind of legislation. So this was an interesting, I would say, an interesting topic to tackle, because as a first one on sustainability, we realized that all the member states were not going at the same speed. So this is something that the members can find on the EBA website. Today, and thanks to a suggestion from Filippo, the topic we want to talk about is electric aviation. And to respond to your question, why should lawyers, or why as lawyers we're interested to talk about electric aviation, it's simply because as lawyers we often are a bridge between the private sector or between the operators and the authorities. And when we discussed with Filippo about this topic, I realized that a few weeks ago, we were already contacted in France by an operator or a new startup entity who wanted to start the business of electric aviation. And one of the first concerns of this operator was to have an idea of whether the regulation was adapted to his business, whether the authorities were prepared to accept this business as it is. And we realized that, in fact, the French authorities, at least, I don't know whether it's the case for other member states, but they already prepared some work with the EU Commission to integrate this business in the legislation. It doesn't mean that the legislation is ready. There is everything to be done. Yeah. But it means that the authorities are already concerned by this topic. And this is why we think that this is something we should, I would say, discuss more widely with the other group of the AMAC. But I will leave Filippo, if you're okay, Paul, talking about this matter, because he was more involved than me on this.
Okay, fine. Let's jump to Filippo. Hi, how are you doing? I must admit that when I kind of think about the lawyers committee, I expect a focus on some of the, let's say, technical elements to do with transactions and sales, some kind of precise regulatory issues, but you seem to have taken a much more broader view, looking at the way, in fact, the whole industry can be revolutionized through electric aviation, if I'm not mistaken. So tell us a bit about that, Filippo.
Well, yes, of course, the industry is an interesting moment now, because we are starting now with electric aviation. Okay, so we are in a crucial point. As Amaël said, we are a bridge between the operators, between the companies and the legislator. So we want to be sure that this new business model that will be created is well organized. Okay, rules are very important. I prefer to have less rules, but very clear, that are helping the industry and helping the civil society. So it's good that at this point we help the companies to organize together with the authorities a good business model. Now, we started research on electric aviation a few months ago, and everything has started from a document prepared by the NASA authority in the US. They were indicating, I have prepared a few points, but I can tell them to you. They identify an issue, okay? And the issue was that there were so many airports within the US, and the amount of airports were used was very small, okay? On 5,000 airports, there were just 70 really exposed, okay? Why? Because all the others were small airports, regional airports, maybe even close to each other. That does not really make sense to exploit with the kind of fleet we have at the moment. Okay, so in this report, one of the proposal was why not with short-range electric flights? Why not to exploit these airports? Okay. So I got in touch with the author of one of the author of this report, and we discussed, and we said this could be also this idea could be also translated to Europe, because in Europe we have a lot of regional airports, and usually these regional airports are sitting in areas that are not maybe completely developed, or that have a problem on their development. It's difficult to reach them there, and it's difficult for people to travel. So we think that there can be a solution. What can be a solution? It's the short-range flights between the regional airport, okay? And these can happen with these new products that are coming to the market. There is a company in Europe already that has developed a 20-seaters aircraft. It's called Heart Aerospace, and this is very interesting concept because the plane, it's like a normal plane with 4 engine, turboprop. I mean, there is not the fan, of course, but there is not the jet, but it's 4 engine and can take for the moment a total range of 400 or 500 kilometers. Now, this will be available in the market on 2025, 2026, okay? Probably when we will arrive there, the batteries will have also a better range. So the idea is to use this kind of aircraft. There will be other models, there will be other companies preparing this aircraft, and create movement, shuttle service between the regional cities, okay? This organizing also a different way of traveling, moving to the concept of the airport to the air station. Why? Because maybe this little airport will become like a train station. You can board quickly, you can bring not huge volume of luggages, and you can fly to the next city in a very quick way, maybe also with a parking fee at the airport reduced, okay? It's like having a flying metro, basically. I always give the example of my area in Umbria and Tuscany, the airport of Florence. Everyone knows the Florence airport, and the airport of Perugia. It's just 130 kilometers from each other, but to travel between the two cities is a mess because roads are not so developed, infrastructure is not so good. A system like this could resolve a lot.
Filippo, I see the potential, and certainly this focus on regional airports has been a focus for the EBAA. I know it's a big focus for the GBA as well, so there's a lot of unused capacity there. Playing the devil's advocate, I can't think of a startup company who has got its act together to launch and certify a business aircraft in the last 30 years, with the exception maybe of Honda Jet, which I think is really exceptional and took decades. So something kind of bells in my head when I hear about certification in 2026. How confident can we that this technology will actually get through the certification bottleneck?
Well, they are pretty confident, and they have a partnership also with United Airlines, and they received already a letter of interest to purchase these aircraft from even SAS, if I'm not mistaken. So they are sure that they will, in this case, have the plane ready for that 2025, 2026. It's okay. Not the only, yep.
If people in the audience want to come in on this as well, I'd really be keen to hear, maybe even the Financiers Committee, and what you think about the potential for actually getting this technology to the market. While you're thinking about that, Filippo, my question for you is, again, the role of the Lawyers Committee in this. I assume you're not going to set up a company to run these flights, but is it about creating a regulatory framework, or starting the discussion about a regulatory framework which will really facilitate this type of operation?
Correct. This is the role. That's why we want to lead, but of course cooperating with everyone, this kind of discussion. We want to create a second line of business for the business aviation, okay, where you have usually business aviation, you have jets, and you can have also regional fleets of this kind of aircraft. And also we think that we should discuss the fact that if an operator operates 10 standard business jet and a fleet of 10 electric aircraft, we should have a compensation for the CO2, okay? So this is also a way to be greener and to support the fight to climate change, okay? So our role as lawyer, it is to help the industry, to accommodate the needs of the industry, and to deal with the authorities in order to have a good standard legal framework where the operators can succeed. We know that aviation, it's always under the eyes of the authorities, of course, because of pollution, because of other problems. So we really want to facilitate, and we can, because of course we know the framework, so we will try to help the companies. That's it.
One question in the chat from my colleague Robert Baltus. Is it something that you'll address at national, at global, or at European level?
Well, I would start with the European level. Okay, so I would like to start step by step. Then the business model can be replicable, so it's not difficult. But my idea is that the European Union, that at the moment it's under an important exercise, also in relation to the environment, to the support we give to the climate change, to fight the climate change. We should take the lead on this. Of course, as I said, it's not my project or our project, it's everyone. Because of course, if the climate, the environment will benefit of this, everyone will benefit. And it's also to launch a different way of traveling. Traveling lighter, flying lighter, which at the moment is not really possible in some areas, okay? And quickly, and maybe also daily, because a fleet can cover a regional area and organize more than one trip per day between the same cities. Okay, so I will start from Europe. Of course, we can demonstrate that we care about the environment. We can demonstrate that we are doing something, and it's a starting point, this discussion, and it will be very important to continue.
Right, and just to continue on that point, Amaël, do you have experience where regulators are already open to kind of certifying this type of technology, making exemptions? What's your understanding of the
indeed.
approach there?
Yeah, because there is one case, basically. There is one aircraft, which is the Pipistrel, which is already flying, and the French authorities have been questioned by the companies in charge of the Pipistrel operations, and the DGAC realized that the legislation was not adapted to this aircraft. So therefore, what they did is basically they issue a derogation in July 2020 concerning the airworthiness and the maintenance of the aircraft. And this derogation is valid for 1.5 years. It will expire at the end of December 2022. But this shows that the authorities want to encourage the operation of this aircraft, but they need time before having a legislation which is adapted to this aircraft. So for the time being, they are issuing derogation. And we also noticed that the French authorities are in contact with the European one on this matter, because indeed the legislation is not prepared for electric aviation. But what we see is that they are moving, and the authorities are progressing. So it's important to be aware as EBAA member of what is happening on this side, because things are moving, and we must make sure that we do not miss any opportunity.
Very good. We have the, go on, Filippo, please.
Just last thing, why the business aviation can lead this kind of revolution. This is because, as I said, there will be regional fleets, okay? Every region probably will have deployed, in every region there will be deployed a fleet from one company or another. And as you can understand, Ryanair or big companies will maybe not interested in to lead this, okay? Whilst the aviation company, the business aviation company can be. And I'm sure that we can make the difference also with the knowledge of the various regional areas that we have.
Yeah, okay, very good. We have the financiers on board as well, and Alexander Asher from Global Jet, who is focused on leasing options. And I can see a link with leasing here, because this is not so much really individuals owning aircraft and having them managed. This is more a case of actually a kind of fleet that's run by companies and made available as public transport. Are you ready to provide leasing finance for these type of new technologies?
I mean, sustainability and innovation is, of course, a big topic for us also. But like Marie-Laure wrote in the chat, we have to wait until it's fully certified. We are not usually first movers for a new aircraft type, because as you said, in leasing, residual value is very important, and it's difficult for us to do that on those types of aircrafts. But I believe it's one of those future innovations as well with cars. Why not have those electric aircrafts leading, especially those short-range transportation chains? So I think going forward, this is something we will have to look at. But like you said, 2025-ish, for us, it's still so far ahead. Same as with some other beautiful aircrafts coming out with the 10X or G400. If this takes 4 more years, we deal with the value then and concentrate maybe right now on PDP financing or something like that.
We're talking about a completely new propulsion system, and you can't wait 5 years.
Well, we have to wait for the full aircraft to make our assessment. We don't lease only parts.
Okay, Marie-Laure, thinking of just kind of as somebody who's interested in aviation, what do you think when you hear these type of presentations? Are you sort of enthusiastic, optimistic that we will be soon seeing very different types of aircraft in the air?
Well, I do not have any crystal ball, but I agree with Alexandra. Sustainability and transition towards a green mobility is absolutely necessary, key, and I think the people in Europe are looking forward to that. So for sure, the banks will be a key player in this transition because we need to provide financing to these new assets. However, what we finance at this stage on the bank side are really assets that are already certified and already flying, already registered with the local civil aviation authority. For the moment, the new electric machines are most of the time not yet certified. The purchase price is not absolutely clear. The residual value 5 years later is relatively uncertain, and we don't even know if they can be registered and with a registration mark. And so, if we can take a mortgage or any kind of security on these assets, so I think it's probably far too very premature to discuss about financing these assets, except for private equity funds or some kind of investment funds
yes,
that are dedicated to this kind of innovation. But from a bank's perspective, and especially a private bank perspective, this is not exactly what we are doing at the moment.
Okay, very good. I see we have Reese Foles on the line as well, and this is kind of a prelude because we'll be discussing this in our meeting on Thursday as well. Reese, if you're online, I was wondering if you could tell me if the insurance industry is looking at the new electric propulsion technology and considering how to approach that. Reese, are you there?
I am indeed, and apologies for joining late. Unfortunately, dealing with an outbreak of COVID at the workplace, so that's taken most of my morning, so apologies on joining you and the team late today. Without giving too much away for the call on Thursday, the short answer is yes. Broadly across the insurance market, different underwriters, different syndicates, different companies have different approaches to risk. And you could define risk in a kind of a very broad way, but an appetite as a capacity provider and a risk carrier to insure one certain type of risk or another. And there are underwriters, insurance companies and syndicates that are very much at the forefront of providing risk transfer mechanisms and insurance solutions to this very new emerging sphere of whether it's green tech, hybrid tech, unmanned aerial vehicles. Just like the insurance market have stepped up in a number of explosions of good technology in the past, whether that was the advent of the jet age, and some of the technology that we've seen come into the manned aviation sphere. But now we're dealing with a very different flavour of risk, but insurers are there stepping up to provide solutions. Okay, fine. It sounds to me like the insurance are taking this a bit more, putting a bit more attention into this now than some of the business aviation departments of banks. Thanks, Reese, and that's kind of a prelude to the discussion next week. I'm going to move on to more kind of current issues in just a couple of moments related to finance, where we are now. We had a big announcement from Gulfstream, of course, yesterday as well, the impact of all of these exciting things. But we also have Stefan de Wolf, who's
working for IBAC and very focused on regulations. And I'd like to hear from him sort of perhaps IBAC's view on electric aircraft, on sustainability, and just generally whether you think this is something that we're going to see in the near future. Stefan.
Yeah, hello everyone. Well, sustainability has been on the agenda for quite some time already, and of course it will remain there. It's one of the top priorities. Then specifically into the programs, I think that we're trying to sense where the industry is going, and we're about to launch sort of a first beta testing for the unmanned vehicles. So that will address, of course, the all those electric source of power for those.
What are you beta testing?
So far, these BEO has been only for, I would say, traditional aircraft.
Okay.
But
and just in case people aren't up to speed about it, ISBEO is a standard for business aviation operations.
Yeah, that's correct.
Safety standard.
And
so you're looking at an ISBEO potentially for unmanned vehicles.
We just finished the audit protocol. It's going to be tested in the next few months, and the idea would be to have an update to the standard itself for the next update. That's going to be in about early 2023, but the testing will start next year.
Great. And this is unmanned. Now, what about, because in fact, the thing about Filippo's, the concept that Filippo is explaining is that it's pretty close to what we already have. This is not eVTOL. This is essentially just a new propulsion system. So what are the, could that just fall under ISBEO? Could it fall, for instance, under Part CAT, or would it be a new regulatory structure?
Actually, we have someone from Joby who used to be Uber Elevate on the team that was reviewing the standard and the audit protocols. So yeah, this is definitely on the agenda. It's just that right now, the request we have from currently registered operators concerns unmanned electrical aircraft.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, you're confident we'll see this in the next decade? I guess you are if you're working on the standard. Yeah, cool. Curious to see what's going to happen in the next 5 years. Okay, fine. Very good. Thank you, Stefan, and financiers. It's a period where it's apparently almost impossible to buy the aircraft that you want. How is this impacting on the finance industry? Alex, we'll start with you.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of activity in the pre-owned market. However, our numbers show that listings go back. However, transactions volumes go up, which means that some of them are not maybe listed even, and they're just sold before they are listed. So there's a lot of activity there, and speed on pre-owned transactions is key to make it happen as a financier. So it's important to be in discussion early so we can work alongside with the clients. But in general, I think it's a good sign for the market. However, if I was a broker, I would see that maybe quite different because there's not so much inventory out there. But we see an uptick of inbounds. So that is a good sign, and the backlog of OEMs is as well not that bad. There was a slowdown, obviously, in new builds, but now the recovery is there. And
let's say if we compare it to 3 years ago, are you in a sense a bit more spoiled for choice now when it comes to customers? And does that mean that you can actually be a bit more risk averse? What I mean is that perhaps financial institutions were so keen to do deals because there weren't so many deals out there 3-4 years ago that you may have been able to take on customer profiles that were perhaps a bit more risky than you would be willing to do now.
Sure. I mean, maybe Marie-Laure is answering on that as well, because as BNP, they look at very different deals than we do. But for us, compared to 2-3 years ago, we have thankfully a lot more inbounds on clients we have never talked to before. but a lot of them are new buyers and first-time owners accordingly, and some individuals, and sometimes we cannot serve all of them because our expectations on the cash flow those individuals and companies have do not match. But overall, I think it's a good sign that a lot of people who were heavily chartering are now considering buying their first jet. So I think overall it's a good sign, and as well, especially the leasing proposition gains a bit more interest, which is good for us.
And because the availability are so low, there are some people who just, they need to make the decision, you know, very, very quickly. Can banks facilitate that? Are banks speeding up to cater for these sort of situations?
I mean,
Maire-Laure.
Yeah, exactly.
Maire-Laure. Okay.
Well,
how nice of you, Maire-Laure.
Well, thank you for the question. I think generally speaking, it's a good sign for the market because the residual value will probably stabilize and possibly, hopefully, go up a little bit. We have seen strong depreciation over the last few years, and especially at the beginning of the COVID period, which was probably a bit too pessimistic because there was no transaction, so the values couldn't depreciate that so fast. So I think now hopefully the values will stabilize, and it's very good. It's very good for the manufacturers. What we have seen over the last couple of months is probably a number of requests from clients who didn't know precisely what they wanted. They were first-time buyers, they were thinking about buying, but they didn't make up their mind. So now the transactions are effectively very quick, and the market is rising. But from a financing perspective, most of our, and from a private banking perspective, we are serving clients who are extremely wealthy, and most of the time they are able to pay cash. So unlike in a leasing transaction where the financial institution acquires the aircraft and lease it to the client, as a bank, we provide mortgage loan financing, and so in that case, the client can acquire the aircraft, the pre-owned aircraft, just to close the transaction quickly within the agreed time frame, and we can arrive a couple of weeks later to refinance the aircraft, and so we provide cash to the client, who, even if it was too short to be ready for the closing. So this is something we do very often, and we can also refinance aircraft that the client has acquired some years ago, which is something we can we see at the moment. We also see requests from pretty old aircraft, more than 15-year-old, which is something that was very, very unusual before. So in some cases it's doable, in some other it's not.
Okay, very good. So what you're saying is not necessarily going much faster, but we can provide solutions which involve really doing the work afterwards, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we can always provide solution, and we can always design the right solution for the clients. We also see clients willing to buy brand new aircraft, even if they are going to be delivered in 18 months or 2 years from now. They are trying to find intermediate aircraft just to have a solution.
Yeah.
But I think the new market is also picking up.
Yes. Alex, how is it going with your objective to get more people in the business aviation and market in Europe to open up to leasing possibilities and leasing finance?
I think especially in uncertain times, it's interesting to not deal with the residual value risk and have a bit of a shorter commitment on your aircraft. And with all these new aircrafts coming out, maybe you want to upgrade easier and not deal with the sale. So I think there's momentum there that some people just rethink how they currently do their business jet financing as a depreciating asset. However, it's still a strong requirement to as well provide loan structures, because a lot of clients are just very well accustomed to the ownership and the tax situation considering a loan. So it still needs a lot of education on what the operating lease specifically means with all the jurisdictions involved. Yeah, I think there is a lot of good reasons to consider that when you think about buying something new.
Well, what are the advantages?
And that you don't have to deal with a residual value risk. You don't. Okay. You can walk away. You have a fixed rate, and we finance much higher. Marie-Laure talked about it as well, a bit on the risk, and we would finance up to 100% of the purchase price. And a typically loan structure is between, let's say, 70 to maximum 80%, I think.
But you still come up with this basic mentality, fixed mentality, where people just want to own the aircraft because they want to say that I own an aircraft. This is why I went through so much struggle to become a billionaire, so that I can. Is it as simple as that?
Well, I mean, when you compare yourself to the car industry, at the beginning, yes, nobody thought about leasing either. And now you have these even fractional ownership structures everywhere, and leasing is increasingly easy. So I see. You can
still tell people that you own it, even if you don't really.
Exactly, but the lawyers.
That's what I do with my car. That's what I do with my car. I don't own it.
Legally.
My car.
True, but I feel like I own my leased car, so.
Okay, well, I don't know if you can spin a sort of marketing campaign about that, around that, but maybe. Marie-Laure, I think we really kind of done the sustainability issue, but I just want to draw attention to the fact that that we have really paid a lot of attention to that, and that it is a big issue for banks. But I think another interesting one, which we still might focus on, is just on the different registrations regimes in Europe, and how that can really create time lags for financiers and slow things down. Are you still seeing this as an issue?
Well, I think this is a good question for the lawyer. This is also an issue to a certain extent for the financiers, because it's still difficult to move on. I mean, it's still not straightforward, not always difficult, but let's say not straightforward to move an aircraft from one European country to another one. There is no unique and no standard registration process. The time frame, the mechanism, the requirements may be different from one country to another. And so it's a pity that it's not harmonized at the European level, because for maintenance, there are standards, for safety, there are standards that are European ones, and not for registering the aircraft, and also not for taking mortgage and securities on the asset. But at least for the registration of the aircraft in the various member states, I think it would be extremely useful to have a kind of a unique framework that would allow people to know in advance, and financiers to know in advance, what is the process, how it works, and to have, I would say, up-to-date mechanism and requirements, working with PDF documents, things like that, very basic, but which helps a lot when it comes to moving an aircraft from one register to another one.
Amaël,
so, I mean, is it an issue for financiers? Yes, it's a concern, I would say. It's not really an issue because we know that there are differences, and we are prepared to that. And also, most of the clients tend to go to the most, I would say, customer-friendly registers, which is a pity for the other ones, because they are losing business and money and customers. But as long as our clients choose user-friendly registers, it's relatively simple most of the time for the financiers.
Yeah, but also I think, I mean, there's something to be said for, if you own an aircraft in Germany, operated in Germany, to take an example, that it makes sense that it's registered in Germany as well, and not offshore somewhere else. Amaël, Filippo, I know that you're very busy creating a new regulatory structure for future propulsion, electric propulsion, and so on. But you know, would you consider taking on this type of project as well, harmonizations across registrations? I know that in the past, the Lawyers Committee created a beautiful booklet, which really gives a sort of baseline where we stand with all of the different registrations. Is that something that we can build on?
I think that, Amaël, can I address it, or? I think that it's not so easy, of course, because it's a political decision. Some jurisdictions decide to keep the registration in a certain way. Some others, they make it easier. I think the best thing for the banks and for the private funds is to know the jurisdiction, because in the end, there are 2 or 3 jurisdictions within Europe that are giving a good support, not just in the procedure of registering the aircraft, but also how the aircraft should be managed. Okay, so it's a decision also of the states that creates good competition, because sometimes harmonize it means kill also the service. So it's important to, yes, to know 2 or 3 good jurisdiction, and as you said, if you can afford the private jet, maybe you should also decide what is the best opportunity for you to register your plane.
Yeah, I'd imagine when we're talking about harmonizing, our members are talking about harmonizing in the sense that it becomes a bit more like Malta and not a bit more like.
Yeah, because you need to be careful when you harmonize. Some things can be harmonized, like the safety standards for sure, but you know, some other things is more difficult because there are jurisdictions that they don't want to deal with this kind of registration. There are others that they want.
But listen, Filippo, has this got anything to do with the fact that if we harmonize, that Malta would lose its unique value point, unique selling point?
You don't. No, it's not about that. For me, the important is to keep the standard up, because then if I go to the service that we have in Italy for private registration for business jets, it's a big headache. So you know, you decide where you want to go, and with planes, you know, it's a flying object. I mean, Malta, but also Ireland, also there are other jurisdictions. That booklet that you mentioned, it's very interesting because it reports clearly all the difficulties, pro and cons, and it's very easy. So I'm sure that banks, they know what are the best jurisdiction to, you know, to register. So yeah, I would harmonization in certain things, it's very important. In others, I think we should see what is the final result then.
Amaël, do you think that France is the model, the gold standard registration and the authority that Europe, the whole of Europe, should be based on?
Well, I'm maybe too short to respond to this issue, because I think in the audience we have someone like Mathieu who is maybe more aware.
Mathieu, do you want to join Mathieu also from France?
Available. Yes,
I am French indeed.
Sorry, Mathieu, to involve you without asking previously.
No, that's fine. And actually, that's even. I mean, that's fine because you know, I was listening to this discussion, and I was one of the initiators for the study last year and the year before on the so-called harmonization of the registration processes. First question, the French registry. I think, you know, it's got its pros and cons like any other registries, but, you know, people have been complaining about the French bureaucracy and everything. To be honest, I think that the French registry is a very good one for 2 reasons mainly. One, it is a owner's registry. So there's a specific provision in the Civil Aviation Code that provides that registration provides evidence of title. So for lessors like, you know, Alex, this is a very important issue. And B, and you know, we've always found that dealing with the French DGAC is very easy. I mean, they look at the documents and they're very, you know, they scrutinize everything, but they're really willing to help, and they most of the time, I mean, if you prepare your submission well, and all the documents that are required to be produced are produced, they can more or less guarantee a same-day registration or same-day deregistration or mortgage registration and so on and so forth. So it's a very efficient registry. Again, having dealt with, you know, most of the European registries, I think that the French one stands out. Okay, the Isle of Man or the UK register or the Maltese one, also very user friendly. But I think that the French DGC is doing a very good job. One last thing on this harmonization stuff. It's not just, I mean, of course, the banks need to be comfortable with the registries, but what happens in the average, lifetime of a business jet, or the ownership of a business jet, is that owners will sometime want to change the operator, for some reason, and they move, again, within the lifetime of the financing or the lifetime of the aircraft. They want to move from one operator to another in Europe, and it so happens that the two operators are not in the same jurisdiction, and they do not register aircraft in the same registry, and this is where get to, you're confronted with issues of having to produce apostille documents, notarization, and so on and so forth. And that can make life of the owners willing to change registry very difficult, and therefore, risk questions for lenders.
That's where the complications are. Indeed. Thank you for that, Mathieu. And I think we've just gone past our 45 minutes, and this is just supposed to be a 45-minute call. That's the whole concept, which, as I said at the beginning, was established by Justine. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Amaël. Thank you, Marie-Laure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Filippo, for this very engaging discussion.
Thank you.
We are concluding this week, we're concluding this Thursday with tech and risk management. I would recommend everybody on this call to join that as well. In that case, we'll see you there, and please do contact me if you would like to get more involved in any of the committees, or you would like to learn more about any of these topics. I won't be able to answer your questions most likely, but I will be able to find somebody who can. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Paul.
Bye.
Bye-bye.